Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we're going to be talking all about relics, as well as which ones you might want to consider farming after you get to Trailblaze level 40. We're going to be breaking down the Caverns of Corrosion, as well as simulated universe sets, so you guys can pick and choose which set might be the most suitable for your account and for your teams that you're interested in constructing. In addition to that, I'm also going to be giving you guys exactly what I'm farming, as well as a bit of the theory behind that, so maybe you guys can get a few ideas from that and, kind of implement that into your own gameplay as well. It goes without saying that there's no right answer to really any of this, and it's really going to depend on who is currently on your account and who you want to be on your account in the future. And you might also want to consider what might be future-proof as well when you're farming these sets, as miHoYo is almost certainly going to release more sets, and it's probably a pretty good idea to identify which sets are very, very strong and which sets are probably going to be, maybe a little bit power crept in the future. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing to understand is going to be whether or not you should farm gear at all when you get to a certain Trailblaze level. So pre-40, as I mentioned in my stamina video, I would not recommend farming any of the Caverns of Corrosion or simulated universe gear farms. And the reason for that is that you're not going to get anywhere near as much gear as you will at Equilibrium level 3, and you're also not, for the most part, eligible to get any gold gear. Now, gold gear is basically the final tier, the best in slot tier for all relics, and that only starts dropping consistently at Trailblaze level 40 and higher. So you probably don't want to farm any of the gear until you get to at least Trailblaze level 40. When you get there though, you are guaranteed to get one piece of gold gear every single Cavern of Corrosion or simulated universe run that you complete. So if you did 10 runs, you'd get 10 gold pieces. Now you might be wondering, okay, well I have a bunch of purple pieces here. They're pretty good. Why are the gold pieces so much better? Well, across the board, gold pieces actually just have higher stats on everything. So their base stat, their main stat is going to be higher, and all of their substats are going to be higher as well. In addition to that, gold items can be upgraded not 12 times like purple, but 15 times. So their endgame scaling potential is just way higher. Granted, you're not going to be taking any gold items to 15 this early unless they're really insane, but they have the potential to grow into best in slot pieces and give you an avenue to power up your characters further and further as you get more and more materials. So they're basically just vastly superior and dominate purples in every single way, shape, and form, and you want to be getting to a full set of gold gear on all of your characters as fast as possible and as feasibly as possible. But getting to that point and getting it efficiently is going to be the topic of this video, because there is so many different sets in this game, and there is so many different sets that the characters would like to use, that it can be pretty difficult to understand, okay, who should I farm first? If I have a limited amount of stamina every day and I'm getting one gold piece, what am I going to farm, man? Like, what is first and what is the safest to farm? Well, first and foremost, I want to point out that you're not just getting the one piece of gold gear, you are also farming purple gear at the same time. So the drop tables are as follows. You're going to get one piece of gold gear guaranteed after you get to Equilibrium level 3. You're going to get 2 pieces of purple gear, and you're going to get 3 pieces of blue gear. Now, all of the blue gear in the game is pretty much safe to salvage, and you can just turn that into materials. But the purple gear can still be reasonable and good if it's got a really good set of stats on them. So you're farming basically 3 items per run of the sets that you want. Now, in Star Rail, sets are actually, like some of them are really insanely strong, so much so that I wouldn't even run a character without their set, but some of them are pretty mediocre. And then there are some sets which can be used on characters who you wouldn't expect. Okay, so let's get into that first and foremost. First, let me give you guys a couple of examples of characters where I believe their set is like so important that they actually feel like they must have it. And that is the 2 shielding characters that everyone's going to be getting access to. So you can see here my 2 shielding characters here, March as well as Trailblaze of Fire, 2 of the best free-to-play units which you're going to get access to. I feel like their set is just so overwhelmingly strong that it just feels like it's mandatory. That set is going to be a Knight of Purity Palace. So what the set does is it gives 15% increased defense as well as 20% increased shielding capabilities. So the way that works in this game is that it's going to take all of what you shield and then just multiply that by 20%. So it's literally straight up 20% more shields. And that is ridiculously crazy. Because of the way shields work in these kind of games, the more that you shield, the exponentially easier the content becomes. Because let's say that you were to shield half the damage of everything hitting you. Well, you'd still be taking half of that damage, so you'd have to heal that back up. But if you shield 100% of the damage, well, now your team is literally invincible, and also you don't have to bring a healer. So the way that shields work in Star Rail is so powerful that it really does feel like if you were to get that extra 20%, you can get closer and closer to that invincibility mark for the content that you are doing. And of course, shielding is a proactive approach as well, so it is going to be like very strong, specifically Trailblaze of Fire. Getting those shields up, getting them stronger, that is basically the #1 priority, at least for me on my account, and and that's why I kind of felt like the shielding set was almost mandatory. Now, the other set, which I feel like is a little bit this way, is actually kinda this set here. So it is the Musketeer of Wild Wheat. Now, the Musketeer of Wild Wheat is so powerful is because its 4-piece grants 6% increased speed. Now, speed is on supports the best stat. It's not even close. It's ridiculous how good speed is on supports. It's going to give you more skill points by generating them like on all those supports, which basically just like, it's like this compounding effect where you just have like way more resources, which just allows you to outmaneuver your opponent so much more. More skills, more supporting skills, more heals, and more ability to do everything you want. So having speed on your supports is just invaluable. In addition to that, it also further compounds the fact that the best supporting set right now in the Planosphere ornaments actually requires your supports to have 120 speed, and increasing the speed of your supports by 6% is at worst most of the time going to be 6 speed, which is going to get you much closer to getting that 120 speed, which you need to enable this set and grant all allies 8% increased attack, which, you know, that's going to apply to your 1 or 2 damage dealers, which is a big deal early on when we have so much limited stats. So overall, speed is really the massive thing that you need. You can see here that my Bronya does in fact have the 120 speed required to make this set work, and that's going to mean that her teams are going to be doing 8% increased attack damage, which is really good. So overall, speed is absolutely a premium stat. Getting access to it is going to be why this set feels like the best one. In addition to that, this set is also fully viable on damaging characters, not only for the 4-piece, but also for the 2-piece. You can mix and match the 2-piece of Wild Wheat with a 2-piece of their elemental set, and you can achieve in some mode cases, and in a lot of cases, actually their best in slot sets. So the Musketeer of Wild Wheat almost feels like one of those sets where you're going to want that on the supports over pretty much anything else. There's not really a whole lot of stats you can run on supports either, so it's definitely going to be a really good set to farm. So those are the 2 sets which I feel are really powerful for your teams. The Shielder one almost feels like you just really need it for your shielders, and the Musketeer of Wild Wheat is literally so universal that all of the supports would love to use a 4 pieces of it. Your healers, your supports, pretty much like anyone. The DPS can even use it. Those are the kind of sets which I think are really stand out and like really a big one. Now that we understand some of the more powerful sets, I want to quickly go over the quick gearing priority here for characters. I know I mentioned it in my Relic video, but I think it's important to note when selecting your pieces as well as farming up your gear. So on all characters, the priority for gearing them up and selecting their pieces is as follows. The most important thing to get right on all your characters above all else is getting their main stat right. So for March here, on her boots, it would either be speed or defense. On my Sele, her main stat is going to be attack on her boots. The set doesn't matter, nothing matters, just get the primary stat and get it right. Now, the actual rarity of the piece is also going to dictate how powerful this stat is, and whether or not you want to invest in it too much. But for the most part, you know, get the main stat right and on the highest rarity you possibly can. The next thing to get right is going to be the set. This can be sometimes as important or more important than the main stat, as we talked about earlier with the supports as well as the shielders. You know, the actual main stat, you know, is not as important as the set bonus for those characters specifically. But when it comes to pretty much everyone else and a universal rule, you do want those main stats and then you want to move on to the sets. So right now, none of my characters on my account are actually at that point. It's definitely going to be a point which is pretty far in the future. You can see here my Sele is using complete rainbow gear, just mix and match everything all over the place here. Nothing like is locked in and nothing is good. Alright, so you've decided you want to farm some gear, so you roll up with your stamina to the Caverns of Corrosion, and you see so many options to choose from, and you're thinking to yourself, which one is going to be the best for my account? Well, we've already understood now that there are some sets which are really important for some characters, namely the Wild Wheat on pretty much all supports, and the Shielding set on all the shielders. Those are really defining sets for those characters, especially in the early game, and in some cases you want them even more than some of their primary stats. So those are going to be some things that you're going to want to focus on. But then we've also understood that a lot of characters don't really care about their sets too early on. Then numerically they are an upgrade, of course, but they'd much rather get their main stats locked in, and it doesn't matter. They're happy to use rainbow sets for the time being just to get those main stats, and then they can upgrade out of that later on to get the right main stat on the right set when you've got more stamina. So this is going to be a big important factor, but I want to give you guys the full picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through and I'm going to review each of the Caverns of Corrosion for your information and to give you guys the most kind of information here to make your decision for your account. All right, so the first setup here is going to be the Cavern of Corrosion Path of Gelid Wind, which contains the ice set and the wind set. So the wind set is best in slot for Bronya as well as Dan Heng, and it's also a very competitive option for Sampo. Now overall, it's actually a really good set, not only for them but also for all supports. It can be used interchangeably with the Musketeer of Wildwheat, as the ultimate effect on the 4-piece actually provides a 25% advance action forward. Now, that is equivalent to a quarter of a turn every single time you use your ultimate that you gain, which is very strong. So the Twilight line here, the Eagle of Twilight, the wind set, is actually very good, not only for damaging characters that are wind, but also for support. It's not a bad option. But it is paired here with the ice set. You're going to be getting 50% wind set and 50% ice set. So the ice set is actually not quite as universal and not quite as good. There's only one ice DPS character in the game, and this is a damage focused set, and that is Yang Qing. And Yang Qing, actually, based on my calculations, doesn't even want a 4-piece Hunter of Glacial Forest. He wants a 2-piece Hunter of Glacial Forest and a 2-piece Wild Wheat. So he wouldn't even want to use that many pieces of this set. Now, it doesn't make it a bad set, it just makes it very situational, and it doesn't really feel like there's a character that's come out yet who actually wants to use this set. So overall, it's not a bad set, but it's not a set which I feel like is going to be really, really impactful early on. So the wind set is good on a lot of characters, and the ice set is a little bit niche, definitely not a bad domain, and I think the wind set is definitely going to pick up a lot as we get more and more stamina, but right now it feels a little bit like this might be something you want to farm later on. But you know, don't let me tell you what to do. If you guys feel like that set is going to be good for your characters, you should absolutely farm it. This one is definitely best installed on some characters. This one is used interchangeably on Yang Qing, but definitely nothing too insane. Right, next up we have the Cavern of Corrosion, Path of Jabbing Punch. So this is a very interesting Cavern, as it's going to be a little bit of a speculative meta play for people who go for this. So the main set to discuss here is going to be the break set. The break set is going to give you increased break effect on pretty much every character that wears it. And this can be pretty much used universally. Every character has the ability to break, and every character's break effect can be good in certain situations. So overall, this is a set which you could in theory put on all characters. So why didn't I mention it earlier? Well, break effect has actually been nerfed going into 1.0 from the beta. In addition to that, it's also been mechanically changed, and now it works a little bit different. So overall, it's not clear how good break effect is and how good it's going to be when pushing it into the endgame. It could simply be the best, but it could also be incredibly underwhelming. All I can tell you is that in the very end game, not many people were using break effect, and they certainly weren't using the break effect sets in the ultra end game when they're clearing literally the hardest content in the game. That was not present. However, people who were progressing in the earlier parts of endgame, you know, through Memory of Chaos 5 and 6 and stuff like that, they were using break effect. So it's very difficult to place this set. It's definitely going to be a reasonable choice, I think, for early progressors and people trying to push the Memory of Chaos early. But I think in the ultra late game, you're probably not going to be running this as your best in slot on too many people, but I'm happy to be wrong about that, and that's why I put it in the speculative category. I don't have a firm answer on this one. It could be good, but it could also be a little bit wasteful. We're not 100% sure on that, so you guys are going to have to make your decision as you see fit. Now the next one is going to be the physical set. And now the physical set here is actually really good. First and foremost, it's actually best in slot on every physical damaging dealing character. So that's Su Shang, the physical MC, as well as Clara. It is definitely the best. In addition to that, it can also be used generically on all damaging characters. So every single character can use the 4-piece and get full benefit out of it. It's not exclusive to physical characters, which means it's a pretty good set to farm generically for all damage characters. You know, if you're looking for a bit of a boost to all your damaging characters, this one can be fine. And getting that 4-piece on someone like Sele is going to be pretty beneficial. So not too bad there, and this is definitely a very good set and one you will be farming ultimately in the long run for your physical damage dealing characters. Alright, so assessing this is a little bit of a tough one. Obviously it's got one of the best sets in the game, but then it's also got a bit of a wild card there. Let's move on to the Cavern of Corrosion, Path of Drifting. Alright, so this one here has 2 sets on it. It's got the Musketeer of Wildwheat, which we've already established as one of the best sets due to its flexibility and also its speed that it grants for supports, as well as the ability to enable planar sets much easier. So overall, a fantastic set, something that you can literally use on everybody and interchangeably on everybody as well. And you're never going to be unhappy to get a gold piece of musket. You can literally use every main stat that rolls on any musket piece, and that gives it a massive advantage over so many other sets. But it is paired here with a underwhelming set in my opinion. It's paired with the Passerby of Wandering Clouds. Now this set here, in my opinion, due to how impactful speed is on supports, is just not really actually best in slot on anyone. Even on healers, I'd much rather have speed on them on the musket set than having the 2-piece healing here on the Passerby. In addition addition to that, the skill point on the 4-piece is actually not that impactful, as we pretty much understand how to build skill point efficient teams already, and you don't really need that extra skill point at the start of battle. So overall, it's a bit of a blank set, and it's not going to be bad. You can use it as a rainbow set piece for your damaging characters, but you really wouldn't like to have that on pretty much anybody. It might be okay to use a 2-piece early and maybe even a 4-piece to give you a tiny bit of an edge, but in the long term, I don't see any character using this long term. So overall, I don't think this is a very good set, and you're pretty much going to be farming 50% of your sets as duds in the long run while you're getting that Musketeer of Wild Wheat, which, Musketeer of Wild Wheat might make up for that. It is that good. But you guys are going to have to decide whether or not that's going to be good for you or not. Next up is Cavern of Corrosion, Path of Providence, which contains the Quantum set as well as the Tank set. Now, the Quantum set is going to be pretty specific for a lot of damaging characters, but the ones that you can use it on, it's absolutely so far over the line as best in slot, it's crazy. So Sally is one such character. She absolutely wants to use it, and it's absolutely insane on her. So if you could, in theory, complete the 4 set on this while getting her main stats locked in, it would be brilliant, pun intended. However, it is paired, unfortunately, with a very bad set, in my opinion. Now, I'm happy to be wrong on this. It's early days. There could be some insane builds with this set. It could literally be the best set in the game. But right now, with everything I know, it's a little bit underwhelming. So it is a tank set. It does not have any offensive capabilities. It also does not have any skill point or speed manipulation capabilities. So already, it's pretty much knocked out from all damaging characters as well as all supporting characters. And that's pretty much every character in the game. Now, what it does have, though, is damage reduction, as well as a chance to restore a little bit of HP as well as energy. Now, there is like a lot of effects here, and it's pretty hard to actually understand the true impact of this. And you're going to basically have to make teams specifically around tanking in order to get the most out of this. But in terms of general gameplay, I haven't seen any sort of composition where I would want to use this set and have it be powerful. So overall, I think that this is in a similar vein as the set we just talked about, which was this set here. It's kind of a blank set for the most part. You can use it as rainbow pieces, and overall, if you get a 2-piece, 8% damage taken, okay, great. But I don't think it's going to be particularly impactful, and it's definitely not game defining. And no one wants this as their best in slot, to my knowledge, right now. So overall, that's going to be that set. We're going to leave this set until last, but let's talk about the Cavern of Corrosion, Path of Conflagration next. So the Path of Corrosion here, Conflagration, sorry, is the fire as well as imaginary domain here. So the fire set isn't bad, definitely a pretty good set. However, it is not generic. It's pretty much only for fire characters. It doesn't really provide too much benefit to non-fire characters compared to other sets. So it's definitely going to be very specific to Himiko and Hook, who are our 2 fire characters there who deal damage right now. Now, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but as a bit of information here, at least based on my calculations, Himiko as well as Hook would actually prefer to use a 2-piece Firesmith of Lava Forging and a 2-piece Wild Wheat right now for their maximum damage. So it is going to be a little bit awkward here when farming the Firesmith, because you'd actually, to get the maximum best in slot, you'd actually like half of another set as well. But going for the 4-piece Lava Forging isn't going to be bad either for your fire units, and it can be an option, not too bad there. But overall, I don't think it's something which you're going to want to prioritize. Now, it is also paired with the Imaginary set. Now, the Imaginary set is actually insane, but there's not really any characters who want to use it yet. So the one Imaginary character which is on the roster is Welt, and in my opinion, he's most powerfully played as a support. And overall, I don't think support characters really need critical strike rating or critical strike damage right now, so I don't think that it's really got a home yet for anybody in the game until we get like a really crazy Imaginary damage dealer. Now, this is probably going to be insane in the future, but right now we're focusing on the immediate, and the immediate is I need power right now, and I don't think that the Imaginary set is really going to give you the power that you're looking for right now. So overall, I would say that the Path of Conflagration and the Path of Providence are 2 ones that you're going to want to farm much later on for their respective insane power sets here, that being the Quantum and Imaginary sets. Okay, the fire set can be okay earlier, but it's kind of specific to fire units. So I would say overall that these 2 are probably better going to be served for later on farming from my perspective. But if you want to go for a specific set on there, you want to max out your Sele, you go for it, man. Don't let me hold you back. Let's move on to the final path here, the final Cavern of Corrosion, which is the Path of Holy Hymn. So the Path of Holy Hymn is actually the set that I am farming, and I'm going to tell you what. All right, so the Preservation Path gives shields. Pretty much every Preservation character gives shields as part of the description, and overall, this is a completely crazy set. It gives you, obviously, the defense which you need to scale the shields, but also just multiplies all shields by 20%. There is no other stat in the game right now which multiplies shields by 20%. It just doesn't exist. So overall, this is 20% more shields. this is likely going to be, in my opinion, a powerful shielding set for the foreseeable future. So when you look at preservation characters who are coming, who we know are coming, like Fushuan, as she will likely be coming, and will be preservation, she'll probably want this set. And you've got already two insane free-to-play characters who are preservation, Fire MC and March, and they want this set. So it kind of feels really safe to me, at least for me, to farm up the preservation set, because I already have two characters who want it, and I know of a third character who is probably going to want it coming out. There's also Japard if you pulled him as well. And overall, it's a set which feels like it's going to be really strong, even when going the distance. Now, of course, I can't say the future. They might bring out an insane set for preservation, but it feels like it's a pretty good set. And overall, again, you can run the pieces of the preservation set on all the damage dealers just fine. You can run them as rainbow pieces. They just need the main stat, remember that. So you're gearing up all the preservation characters with their best in slot, while also getting some rainbow pieces for your damage dealers. Great. Now, it's also paired right now with the lightning set. Now, the lightning set is best in slot for lightning characters as well. It is their best in slot, and there is quite some lightning characters. Arlen, there is Serval, there is Jin Yuan coming out very soon, and there is also Kafka looming in the distance. And all these characters want the lightning set as their best in slot. So it feels like it's pretty good there as well. And similar to the physical set, if you read the 4-piece here, its effect is actually generic. When the wearer uses their skill, increase the wearer's attack by 20% for 1 turn. So on all of the main damage characters that you will likely have as the main carry, they're going to be using their skill every single turn. And they're going to be getting that 20% attack buff every single turn. So this set bonus is actually pretty strong and pretty generic, very similar to the physical set bonus. So overall, it's got a lot going for it. It's not as good and generic as the physical one, but it's still pretty good. So I think the lightning set is actually a pretty good generic damage dealing set as well. And it's also got a bunch of characters who are coming, who it is their best in slot for. So this is a double best in slot domain, and it's actually the only double best in slot domain in all of the caverns of Corrosion from what I can see personally at this very point in time. And that is the reason why that is the cavern that I chose to farm. I wanted to gear up my characters with what could be considered best in slot, so that's what I've been farming. And it's been working out pretty good for me. I feel like my shielders are so insanely geared, and it's been pretty helpful. My Fire Trailblazer is doing massive shields, my March is really strong, and I'm pretty happy with the results. Now, that doesn't mean, though, that it is going to be the best for your account overall. If you have no need for March, if you don't like Fire Trailblazer, then it's probably not going to be very good for you. If you're not interested in Fushuan in the future, you probably don't want to farm that. And maybe you don't like lightning units, you just hate them, and you want to go with another set as well. I'm giving you guys the information to make your decisions there on the armor sets, and I think you should be able to make a reasonable call, at least, with all that information. So the next thing is going to be to cover the simulated universe sets. Unfortunately, these are a whole lot easier. When it comes to simulated universe, there is two archetypes to discuss. There's damage dealers, and then there are supports. And we're going to split the two gear set discussions into those categories. So let's start out with the damage dealers first. So overall, there are a lot of sets in simulated universe, but there are a few of them which work for damage dealers only. Now, those sets are going to be the Space Sealing Station here, which is on World 3, the Celestial Differentiator on World 4, as well as the World 6 Inert Salcedo. Alright, so overall, I would say that as a rule of thumb, the Herder Space Sealing Station here is going to basically be best in slot for 95% of damaging characters, at least based off of my current maths. Now, if you've found a way to get the damage that you need out of another set, fantastic. But for the most part, if I had to recommend a set to anybody, it would be the Herder Space Sealing Station here, as it really does feel like it just gives you everything you need. So the set gives you 12% increased attack, and if you have 120 speed, you get an additional 12% attack. Now, overall, this is the most raw stats you can get from a set. Now, it can be beaten out in very niche situations by other sets, which we'll talk about in a second here, but going for a generic set and getting stamina efficient, it's pretty much, for me at least, going to be the Space Sealing Station. Now, you can go for other domains, but I think that this is kind of like the domain where pretty much everyone's going to be spending 99% of their stamina when farming the simulated universe, because not only does it have the Space Sealing Station, but it also has an excellent supporting set, which we'll go into in a second here. But as long as you can satisfy the 120 speed requirement, this is going to be pretty much the best in slot, or 95% of the way to the best in slot in most character situations. So the other options that you can go for on DPS characters, first and foremost, the Celestial Differentiator, but it only gives 16% crit damage, which when you compare and pound for pound, measure it out, is just not as strong as the Space Sealing Station we just talked about. Or you can go ahead and go for the Inert Salcedo. Now the Inert Salcedo gives 8% crit, which is great, that is generic damage, and if your crit rate is above 50%, which it likely will be, you'll get 15% increased ultimate damage and follow-up attack damage. Now there's only 2 characters that I would say that this set has a chance of being better on, and that is Clara as well as Jin Yuan. Now overall, I do believe that there are some cases where you might want this set on them as your best in slot, but I went ahead and right before this video tested both the sets on Jin Yuan, and in endgame gear, which is fully decked out for the most part with 24 substats, to give you guys an idea, the Space Sealing Station was 248,000 damage over 8 turns in a normal fight, and the Inert Salcedo was 255,000. So it's a 3 or 4% damage increase over the Space Sealing Station, and the downside here is it's not paired with the other set which we're about to talk about. The Celestial Differentiator, I haven't found a character yet where it's a damage increase. Doesn't mean there won't be one in the future, but that's kind of my assessment right now. So I pretty much would just recommend the Space Sealing Station overall. Alright, so now that we've talked about the damaging ones and we've kind of got a bit of a one to focus on here, assuming you can get the speed requirements, let's talk about the supporting sets next. So for the supporting sets, there is quite a few more on offer here. So the ones I really want to talk about are going to be Fleet of the Ageless, the Sprightly Vonwak, as well as the Belobog of Architects. Let's start out with the most powerful one, in my opinion, the Fleet of the Ageless. So the Fleet of the Ageless gives your main character 12% increased life, which is great, and then 120 speed as a requirement. After you reach that, you'll get 8% increased attack for all allies. Now, based on my testing, this actually stacks. So if you have 4 characters with the 120 speed requirement and this set, you'll actually just straight up get 8% times 4, which is obviously 32% attack across your entire team. Now, you wouldn't do that though. You'd put this on your supports, and you'd have the Herder Station, Space Sealing Station, on your damaging characters, and basically mega juice their attack rating just by using these sets in combination. So overall, it's going to be pretty great. The speed requirement is pretty much automatically satisfied because most supports are going to want to build speed. We've already talked about that quite a lot with the Musketeer of Wildwheat as well as all the speed discussions. All right. So that's a pretty damn good set, and it just so happens to be paired with one of, if not the best DPS set. Wow, that's definitely pretty handy, isn't it? They're pretty good. 2 insane sets together. Okay, so the Sprightly Vonwak is another option for supports. It's essentially going to give you a marginal amount of speed increase over your rotation in a long fight, and it will give you a little bit of an edge by getting your supports to always act first, if you reach 120 speed, which you'll get anyway. But the main line here, which I want to discuss, is 5% increased energy regeneration rate. Now, there's no character who needs this 5% energy regeneration rate right now, which I've actually simulated and calced, but there may be in the future, and this set gives you that regeneration. Now, basically what you would need this set to do is basically take your rotation from, for example, on a support, from like a 4-turn basic attack rotation per ultimate down to a 3-turn attack rotation per ultimate. And this set can absolutely and probably will absolutely do that for some characters, but right now, none of the supports need it in the game, so I'm not going to recommend farming it until they do. You should definitely refer to the build guides which you have for your character to understand whether or not you need to farm this, but I wouldn't blindly farm it, absolutely not. The last one to talk about here is the Belobog of Architects. This is going to be powerful on preservation characters specifically. Gives you 15% increased defense for the 2-piece, which is great. And if effect hit rate is higher than 50%, you get an extra 15%. So on characters like Trailblazer of Fire, this is not really going to be too relevant because you don't actually need effect hit rate. But on characters like March or Japad, who build effect hit rate anyway to guarantee their freezes, this is actually really good. You're going to get 30% increased defense for this set. That's a really big deal. So overall, this probably would come close to being their best in slot defensively if you're trying to really juice up your defensive capabilities and get maximum shielding out of them. But if you want extra damage, actually Fleet of the Ageless will win out here. So it just depends what you want your supports to do. Do you want bigger shields or do you want bigger damage for your team? So overall, you guys can kind of see here, with some minor exceptions here, pretty much Simulated Universe World 3 basically crushes all the competitions. It's got pretty much the best in slot damaging set and pretty much the best in slot supporting set. There are some fringe and niche cases where, like for example, Jin Yuan might want the Salcedo, March might want the Belobog, but overall, I think it's probably safest to go with World 3. Okay, with all that said, guys, hopefully you guys have learned something new. Now, of course, always take all information I give you guys as somewhat of an informational, like, kind of like booklet here, but don't follow it like a straight up one-to-one for your account. Interpret it as you will, and make sure that you apply it to your accounts in the most effective way possible. I'm here to guide you, not here to instruct you. Now, if you learned something new though, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. And if you really liked the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And until next time, hope you guys enjoyed. Cheers.